As a dietitian and certified personal trainer, I have learned a lot about nutrition, fitness, and wellness. And with the new year coming, or whenever you're watching this, you may find some of the tips that I'm going to let you know in this video very helpful. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Katey. I am a registered dietitian and certified personal trainer. On top of making YouTube videos, I am a university lecturer and health writer. So I have quite a bit of nutrition and fitness experience and knowledge. And over the years, I have paid close attention to different fitness trends, supplements, and different diets. And while a lot of them are very temporarily popular, they usually lose their hype because they simply don't work or they're way too hard to stick to. So what should you do if you're trying to adopt new health, fitness, and wellness practices? Well, I have compiled 7 top tips just for you. So let's get started. So tip number 1 is to use small bowls or plates. This is a tip that I always give my friends and family because while it sounds really simple, it's something not a lot of people think of. Let's say you want to treat yourself to a big bag of chips. For a lot of people, they will just eat directly right out of the bag. The issue with this is that you're not really paying attention to how much food you're actually eating because you can't see the amount of chips go down because it's inside of the bag. On top of this, while there were good intentions behind it, when we were kids, a lot of us were told that we needed to clear our plates to avoid wasting. And so naturally, we have been taught over time that you need to clear your plate, clear whatever is in front of you before you are done eating. So if you want to enjoy a food, and by all means, I think we do need to find balance in life, I would recommend that you start focusing on what you're actually serving the food on or in. Going back to that chip example, instead of eating directly out of the bag, it would be a better idea to get a small bowl, like a cereal bowl or something, and fill the bowl up with chips. Once you filled that bowl up, take the bag of chips and put it back into the cupboard so it is out of sight. Go to another room with the bowl of chips you have and enjoy it. There's going to be 2 things that are likely going to happen from this. The first thing that might happen is that you finish the bowl that you have and you are satisfied. Half of the time, we're not actually craving a giant portion of something, we're actually just craving the taste. So for chips, for example, it's usually that salty taste and the crunchy texture. So usually we're actually craving that more than having a very large serving. The other reason why you may feel satisfied after this is because you are telling your brain and your brain's telling you, hey, it's done. And because you've been naturally trained to feel full when you are finished your plate, you are telling yourself, we're done eating. And ultimately, this can save you from eating more than you had intended to. The second thing that could happen is you finish the bowl of chips and you still want more. And this is fine too. But here's the thing, now what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get up, go to the other room where the chips are, get it out of the cupboard, fill the bowl back up, and repeat the process. Sometimes simply that additional barrier of having to go to the next room or get it out of the cupboard or not having it immediately around you can help you slow down and think about whether or not you're actually full, whether or not you still want the chips, and really just take a second before overindulging. And even if you do go and get another bowl of chips, that's totally fine. You're still likely eating less compared to if you were to sit mindlessly watching TV eating out of the entire bag of chips. And this principle can apply to other foods too. Let's say that you usually eat a mountain of pasta on a very large plate. Very, very common for a lot of people. So what you can do is you can try to use a smaller plate. The key is you can always get more. But again, a lot of people end up eating the entire serving regardless of what's in front of them because they are accustomed to expecting that they are finished eating when the plate or bowl is cleared, regardless of its size. The ultimate goal with this is just to be more mindful of what you're eating and be in more control of the portion sizes. And really for a lot of people, they don't want to overeat, they just naturally do because they're not paying attention to it. So by being more mindful, being more aware of what you're eating, and being in more control of your serving sizes, this can help. Okay, so tip number 2 is focus on fiber. Yes, I know that you have heard to eat more fiber. I know, but it is just that important, and I'm going to explain all the reasons why. It's funny to me that we have such a gut health obsessed society, yet most people don't eat enough fiber. And honestly, the number one thing that's going to support our gut health, yes, there are some exceptions, but for the average healthy person, the number one thing that's going to really support our gut health is fiber. My best example, and I always give this to other people, is that you have to imagine fiber as almost being like lifting weights, but for your gut. Because just like lifting weights is going to make your muscles strong, eating fiber is going to strengthen the lining of your gut. And ultimately, this can help with a ton of things, just simply digesting food better as well. On top of that, fiber acts as a prebiotic, and a prebiotic is simply food for our gut microbiome. And this includes things like healthy bacteria and other microorganisms that live in our gut gut naturally. And so when these bacteria and other microorganisms eat fiber, they actually flourish and they can populate even more, and this supports our gut health. On top of this, when we have more healthy bacteria in our gut, it helps to produce different types of byproducts. One example is butyrate, and this is a short-chain fatty acid. And this short-chain fatty acid can support our health in many, many different ways. For example, it is linked with supporting heart health, it can help to lower inflammation, and it can even increase antioxidant levels in our body. So for example, it has been shown to increase an antioxidant known as glutathione, which I have talked about in other videos, so feel free to check those out. And it does so much more than that. And that's just one example of a byproduct that these bacteria produce. And on top of that, fiber helps us produce regular bowel movements. And while this sounds obvious, having regular bowel movements is extremely important. And it's a good indication that your gut is working properly. On top of this though, having regular bowel movements helps to reduce that feeling of heaviness in the gut. And it can help decrease the appearance of bloating. And on top of that, fiber helps to reduce our risk of different chronic diseases. For example, it helps us support heart health and it supports our blood sugar levels, because what fiber does is it goes through our intestinal tract and it helps to scoop up any extra cholesterol as well as extra sugar. And so really, fiber is something that is amazing and you need to prioritize. So tip number 3 is to protect your muscle. I am so glad that this is being talked about a lot more because it is just that important. When I was in school learning about nutrition, I was told over and over and over again how important our muscle is. And I was taught about a condition known as sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss. Now, before I lose anybody that is younger, it affects you too, so please listen up. The biggest misconception is that I think a lot of people just think muscles are for being really strong and helping you lift things. But actually, muscles are a very important organ and it affects our entire well-being. You may remember this from biology class, but inside the cell, there are these little powerhouses known as mitochondria. And say it with me, mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. I'm sure you remember that and had to say it over and over and over again. But what does that really mean? Well, what it means is that mitochondria help to produce energy that our body utilizes, and it helps our body operate. In particular, mitochondria help to produce an energy currency or an energy form known as ATP. And this form of energy is critical for our bodies to do any basic functions. On top of this, mitochondria don't just help with energy, they help with a variety of other things as well. For example, mitochondria play a role in our immune system, slowing down the aging of our bodies, ultimately our cells, helping with just general cell regulation, and helping reduce the risk of different chronic diseases like heart disease and type 2 diabetes. Okay, so hold on, what does this have to do with muscle? Well, when our bodies have more muscle, our bodies produce more mitochondria to support the new demands our bodies have. On top of producing more mitochondria, the mitochondria become more efficient, and they can do their job a lot easier and more effectively. Ultimately, this helps our cells perform better, this translates to more energy, and ultimately better health. Now, going beyond mitochondria and coming back to the topic of just muscle does more than just help us lift things. It helps you move easier. This is why as somebody gets older, they have more trouble moving because they are having muscle weakness and muscle loss, and as well as a reduction of balance and other things. Having more muscles can help reduce the feelings of tiredness and fatigue. It helps you look better. Yes, I said it helps you look better because it is true. And even having more muscle has been found to help reduce the appearance of aging. So for example, research has found that strength training can help increase the production of collagen, which is an essential structural component of our skin. And when we have more collagen, our skin appears more youthful. And you want to know an additional benefit of having more muscle? Well, it helps us burn more calories at rest. So ultimately, this can help with weight management. I could make an entire video on why muscle is just the most magical thing and why it is so important. And maybe I will someday. If you want me to, let me know in the comments. But just know that muscle is something that every single person needs to prioritize. So how do we preserve and protect our muscle? There are two main ways. The first one is to do strength training. This includes lifting heavy weights, doing muscular endurance activities like Pilates, or really any other activity that involves the recruitment of muscles. So for example, playing different types of sports. When it comes to muscle, I always want you to remember this saying, use it or lose it. Use your muscles to keep them and grow them, or lose your muscles if you don't. The second thing is to eat enough protein. And a lot of people have covered protein. Protein's very popular right now, and deservingly so. And the reason why is our muscles are made out of protein. So what we need to do is we need to give our bodies enough amino acids, and these are the building blocks of protein, to maintain them and to build them. Now, how much protein you need depends on a lot of different factors, but I would say generally for the average person, they would benefit from having about 1.4 grams to about 2.2 grams per kilogram per day, or about 0.64 to 1 gram per pound per day if you use pounds or kilograms. That's why I provided both. Now, if you are really young, you may think, oh, this isn't going to happen to me for a very, very long time, so I don't really need to be that concerned. That's not the truth. After around age 25 to 30, depending on who you are and your genetics, but generally around that time, you start to become at higher risk of losing muscle. So the first thing you need to do is focus on building enough muscle while you are young, and then as you get older, trying to maintain it and ideally even build more. And for those of you that are older, you might think, oh, it's too late for me. There are plenty of research studies that have found that regardless of someone's age, they can build more muscle. Yes, it might be a little bit harder and you may have to really prioritize your protein, but you can do it and it is important. So whether you are 16 or whether you're 90, your muscle is so important. Okay, so tip number 4 is to get more sleep. So many people think that your overall health really is a balance between your fitness as well as your nutrition. While these two things are certainly part of the puzzle, it is not true that these are the only things that matter. Remember that your health is holistic. There are so many things that are involved, and if something is out of whack, it can affect all of the other lifestyle habits. Remember that sleep is something that every single person on the planet and animals have to do. And it's not just so that we don't feel tired. Sleep is a biological process that is critical to our survival, and not to be dramatic, but that's true. When we sleep, our body goes into recovery mode. So if you did a huge workout, for example, because you're trying to prioritize your muscle, this is the time that your body goes into repair mode and starts rebuilding that torn muscle and help build your muscles bigger and stronger. Or for example, if you have a cold, this is why you want to sleep a lot more, because your body's trying to recover from it. Or for example, if you want to focus on your skin health, guess what? While you are sleeping, your cells are recovering, helping your cells turn over faster and helping you maintain that youthful look that you want. I'm sure this has happened to you before, but maybe when you haven't slept really well, someone will come up to you and say, oh my goodness, you look so tired. They mean well, but sometimes it makes us feel not so great. And the simple reason why is because lack of sleep can really affect our appearance. It can affect the way we hold ourselves. It can affect the way our brains work. I know when I'm really tired, I don't think clearly. I feel sometimes I'm a little bit more emotional than normal, and I'm sure this happens to a lot of people, and that's how important sleep is. And the thing is if we don't sleep enough, this is where that holistic thing comes in. If we don't sleep enough, it affects other areas of our health and well-being. For example, those who lack sleep on average tend to be at a higher risk of early death. The second thing, and this relates to eating food, is that people who are sleep deprived tend to eat more calories, especially from fat and sugar. And the body is trying to do this because it's trying to produce more energy. And I understand why we naturally gravitate to these things, but the reason why when we are tired, we tend to eat more sugar and fat is because, first of all, sugar is a very quick energy source. It is already broken down, so basically we just need to absorb it into our blood, and it can give us a temporary source of energy. Researchers also found that when we are sleep deprived, we tend to gravitate towards high fat foods. The reason why is because fat is more calorically dense. Fat has 9 calories per gram, while carbs and protein have 4 calories per gram. So naturally, if we're able to have something that's higher in calories for a smaller serving size, we're going to be able to produce more energy from it. And I'm sure you've noticed when you're really tired, the last thing you want to do is eat a salad. On top of this, when we don't sleep enough, our bodies aren't producing hormones in the same way. When we are sleep deprived, our bodies produce more of the hunger promoting hormone known as ghrelin. And so naturally, we are a lot hungrier than normal because we are sleep deprived and these hormones aren't as balanced. So for those of you that are hormone obsessed, please make sure that you're also getting enough sleep. Beyond nutrition, when we don't sleep, we usually don't work as hard, and you may not be as motivated to go to the gym or do a workout or be as active. And ultimately, our performance will suffer. And the funny thing here, and it's a vicious cycle, but when we don't sleep, we tend to not be as active. And when we are not as active, we tend to sleep poorer. So it's this endless cycle. So prioritizing sleep can really stop this cycle from happening. Okay, so what can you do to improve your sleep? This is a little bit challenging because everybody sleeps differently, and what helps one person may not for another. And I definitely know that for myself. But here are some general things that may be able to help. The first thing is to limit caffeine 6 to 8 hours before bed. The second thing I find really helps me is to spend the last 30 minutes before bed not looking at a screen. So maybe you actually open up a real book and read it. The third thing is not exercising 2 hours before bed. If you exercise too early before bed, this can actually wake you up a bit. Number 4 sounds obvious, but going to bed a little bit earlier if possible. Or if possible, maybe you sleep in a little bit more. I tend to sleep better in the later part of the morning. So for me, whenever I can sleep in just a little bit extra, that personally helps me more. Just remember, it's not weak to sleep. So stop listening to anybody that makes you feel bad because you want to sleep. And number 5 helps me a lot as well is sleep in a cold room. And there are so many other tips out there for sleeping. Again, it's a very individual thing, so you kind of have to find what works for you. Tip number 5 is to stop drinking sugar. Notice I said stop drinking sugar instead of stop eating sugar. Well, obviously I'm not saying go and eat a ton of sugar. The biggest issue is actually drinking sugar versus eating it, for example, in candy or in a chocolate bar. And let me explain. The thing about eating sugar, so from an actual food item, it's actually quite difficult to eat a ton of sugar because we naturally will get tired of it. However, the sugar in drinks doesn't have the same effect. And the reason why is because we're not sitting there chewing the sugar, tasting the sugar, and gradually growing tired of it. The thing about beverages is that essentially they are pre-digested. And really basically our bodies don't have to do any work with them. We just drink them, they go to our stomach, they go into our intestine, and then the sugar gets absorbed. But for example, if you're eating a chocolate bar, you're going to have to chew it, swallow it, let it hit your stomach. It needs to digest a little bit and then eventually get absorbed. So when we drink sugars, it gets absorbed way faster and we're able to take in a lot more. The thing about this is that a lot of people don't just have one sugary drink a day. If you're really health conscious, maybe you don't, but for the average person that really nutrition isn't the biggest priority in their life, they can have multiple sugary drinks in a single day. So let's say they have a bottle of Coke, then let's say they have an energy drink, then let's say they go to Starbucks or any other coffee shop and get a specialty drink, and let's say maybe they just have a cup of orange juice or apple juice. Well, this alone can easily add up to hundreds of grams of sugar in a single day. Now, as part of some of the lectures I do give, one of the lectures I give on is sugar, and I do have an example of how much sugar you would have in a single week if you had 1 can of Coke a day. This is the amount of sugar if you had just a single can of Coke once a day for a single week. And this, slightly more, this is if you had a regular Monster energy drink 1 a day for a single week. So as you can see, it really does add up. And when you start to visualize things like that, it helps you really understand how much you're actually taking in. And if I had a single recommendation, it would be to limit as much as you can any type of sugary beverage. It's just way too easy to overconsume, and a lot of people end up overconsuming calories and sugar because of them. Okay, so tip number 6 is to avoid going to the extremes. If you go on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, whatever app you use, you'll notice that a lot of people will be posting different challenges, especially in the new year, but I've also seen the Winter Arc series that's really popular as well. But basically, you'll see a lot of people posting these challenges. So for example, 75 hard, or a no sugar challenge, or whatever. Now, while in theory, these challenges are great, and I'm not trying to say that they're terrible, the issue is that after the challenge is done, usually a lot of people have a hard time sticking to them. And the reason why is because the rules are so restrictive, it's just hard to actually do long term because life gets in the way. And a lot of them are just too restrictive and too extreme. So before starting a new diet or exercise program, all I want you to do is ask yourself, can I do this for the rest of my life? Because if you can't, yes, you might see results in the beginning and that is wonderful, but once you stop, you're more likely to go back to your old habits or even worse. This is why a lot of people say diets don't work, because what ends up happening is they lose a ton of weight at first, and then once they stop the diet, they tend to slowly start going back to their old habits and they slowly regain the weight. And that's why it's called yo-yo dieting. Now, I know this sounds really boring, but what you need to focus on, and if you want to truly see results, is find balance. My dad taught me when I was younger the 80-20 rule, and I really do think it applies to a lot of aspects in life, including nutrition and fitness. So 80% of the time you eat nutritious foods, you exercise regularly, you sleep really, really well. But 20% of the time you let yourself enjoy life a little bit. Maybe you go out for dinner and order a less healthy option. Maybe you don't hit your step count a day or 2 a week. Maybe you go out, drink a little bit, and stay up a little bit late because there's a special event going on. This balance is key to sustaining change in the long run. If you feel deprived, you can fight it and fight it and fight it and fight it, but only for so long. Eventually, for the mass majority of people, yes, there are some exceptions to this rule, but for the mass majority of people, they cannot stick to it long term and they will cave. On top of this, going to extremes can create resentment. You will eventually resent working out if you're forcing yourself to work out 2 times a day or really, really heavy workouts when you're exhausted and you need a break. You will eventually resent eating nutritious foods because you don't allow yourself any flexibility. You will eventually resent your militant lifestyle that doesn't allow for any flexibility in a world that requires it. But you know what happens when you don't work out for a few days when you normally do? You miss it. You know what happens when you eat like shit for an entire week while you're on vacation? You start to crave nutritious foods. You know what happens when you stay up too late too many days in a row? You really start to look forward to a restful sleep. This balance allows yourself to appreciate your healthy habits and not hate them. So of course, please try to have the healthiest lifestyle you can have. But by allowing flexibility and freedom in small amounts, you're also allowing yourself to a balanced life, which in my eyes is the healthiest life you can live. Okay, and finally, tip number 7 is to get your steps in. Increasing my step count is the best thing I have ever done for my physical and mental health. And good news, walking has become popular again, which is amazing. But really, walking is not a trend, and it is crucial for our health. Now, I did an entire video on why walking 10,000 steps a day is good for you, so feel free to check that out if you want to learn more. But really, any number of steps is good for you. And just remember, our society is becoming more sedentary. We are finding more and more ways to not be active. So getting in your steps and getting that movement is really, really important. Here's the thing though, even if you can't hit 10,000 steps a day, which is actually quite hard, increasing your step count at all has been found to improve your overall health. So for example, if you're only getting 2,000 steps a day and you go to 4,000 steps, there can be improvements in your health that way. Now, why is walking important? Well, again, I did a video on it, but I'll give you a summary right now. Well, the first thing is obviously it increases the number of calories you burn per day. That's a given. But it also helps to regulate your blood sugar. And when we have better blood sugar regulation, it reduces our risk of diabetes. And it also helps us keep in check the amount of calories we're having per day because we don't have these up and down spikes in our blood sugar. It also helps to support muscular endurance, so prioritizing your muscle. It also helps to promote blood flow. And this allows for oxygen and nutrients to move throughout our body and do what they need to do. On top of this, it also helps with lymphatic drainage, which can reduce the appearance of puffiness and also better circulate and get rid of byproducts. Also, sometimes people like to refer to them as toxins. Walking also helps put you in a better mood, and so on. Like I said, increasing my step count has dramatically improved my well-being. When I was a student, I walked everywhere. I walked around campus. When I did my placements, I was walking around the hospital, going up and down the stairs like crazy. I was getting tons of steps in. But what happened to me is that just as I started getting into the working world, the pandemic hit. And all of a sudden, I went from walking everywhere to sitting all day. I wasn't in the lab walking around. I wasn't walking around campus. I was not moving. And sitting all day is not good for you. Not only did this affect my mental well-being, but my physical well-being also took a hit. And for a lot of people, I'm sure it did for them too. Now here's the thing, during the pandemic when I was at home, I was actually working out quite a bit. I was doing strength training, I was doing cycling, but my step count was pitiful and I didn't feel great. So over the past couple years, I've had to retrain myself to walk more because before it happened more naturally because I was in an environment where I had to walk a lot. But now that I work mostly from home, I have to be more mindful and conscientious of my step count every day. And I have to put in more effort to get steps in. But since I felt so much better mentally. I think my physical health has improved dramatically. And I do think that when I do get in my steps, I sleep better. So while it sounds simple to just walk more, it really is that important for you. And that's why it is in this video. But any addition of steps is always a great idea and something I strongly recommend. And that's it for my top 7 tips. And I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know in the comments any other lifestyle tips that have really made a difference in your life, because I think the more we share, the more we can be informed and the better overall our health can be. And if you did enjoy this video, I would love it if you would like and subscribe to my channel because your support helps me reach more people like you. And I'll see you in the next video.